President Muhammadu Buhari criticized his heads of security last week for their handling of attacks across the north of the country, saying more needs to be done to resolve the problem. Those words are some of his sharpest criticisms of his security chiefs as the conflict in the north has steadily worsened through most of his 5 years as president. The question now is what has been done and what needs to be done to make the north and country at large safe. Well, security expert and former Department of State Security Assistant Director Dennis Amachree joins us now to do an audit of insecurity in Nigeria over the past 5 years and what new measures need to be put in place. A very good morning to you, Dennis. If we could start at the top with President Muhammadu Buhari himself. He is, of course, the Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria's armed forces. Is this not his own failure, or is this the failure of his deputies?
So if he feels that there should be no more excuses, it also means that he is trying to review what he has been doing to show that the key performance indicators are not coming up very well for the country itself.
Right. Interesting. Now, I would like to take this from the perspective of what Dr. Samuel Obadia had to say. He said he's from the Center of Conflict Management and Peace Studies for the University of Jos. And he said there is still a lack of political will in the part of the Nigerian government to tackle the issue of Boko Haram head on. Now, the question now I want to ask you is, would you agree with this? I mean, what are your thoughts on how the government is really handling this? We've been looking at about 5 years. We've seen, the president come out to make statements like this in various ways. So really, what are we doing? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. You cannot be doing one thing the same way for over. In fact, we've been fighting Boko Haram for 10 years. And we cannot be fighting these people for 10 years. From ragtag army, and right now they are very well sophisticated with help from overseas coming in to help them. So we are playing, I think I should say that we are actually playing kids' glove with them because they are not a very tough group of gang of people that the Nigerian army, as well trained as they are, will just be playing around with.
So what do you need? What do you think needs to be done here? Because you've got the president criticizing his security chiefs, and the way media and ourselves have reported it is as though it's something very serious, which on the one hand it is. But do you expect him to go a bit further and put some actions behind his words? Do you think some sackings, some reappointments would be coming down the line?
Well, a lot of people have been saying it. They want the service chiefs to be changed, I'm of the opinion that it's not really the changing of the service chiefs. But if you look at the key performance indicators again, you'll find out that if you're doing something and you're not getting the desired result, it is high time you review. And the president, the commander-in-chief, should sit down. Maybe 1 year ago, he has told them this same thing about go and take care of this problem. And of course, we've continued like this.
So why, sorry, Dennis, to interrupt you there. So why do you think that we shouldn't have a replacement of these security chiefs? As you've said in your answer to Kachi's question earlier, we've been fighting this insecurity issue for half of the time President Muhammadu Buhari has been in office. So surely at this point, with little to no progress being made on this front, should we not have a revamp of security in Nigeria at this point?
I think the whole security infrastructure should be looked at. Number one, when they say service chiefs, maybe they are talking of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And I think they have tried their best. Not that they've not done well. At least they've been able to, put them at bay. Then, of course, the other service chiefs like the Inspector General of Police, the Director General of SSS, in that area, I would want him to strengthen them. Because they are new guys and they've been doing extremely well, but he has to strengthen them. For the Army, Navy, and Air Force, I think there are other brighter heads that could be brought to play at this time. And then, of course, equip them, because I think that's what the military needs right now. Modern equipment, because war in these days are technology-driven. And if you don't put them up to par, the people that are helping them are coming up from ISIS and all kinds of people, and people that will give them the latest technology that they could buy in the black market. So I think this is something that he has to look at. They are telling them no excuses. I think it sounds like the final notice. But if it is the final notice, we hope that the political will you mentioned earlier will come to play, whereby he will say, yes, now you guys, thank you for helping the country, and then you can just take a bow.
All right, now I would like to touch on what you said earlier. You said, yes, we're looking at this from a 5-year perspective, but we've actually been fighting this for over 10 years. And as you already know, the security chiefs, they change with time. Now, looking at the fact that they change, and we've been fighting this for the past 10 years, would you really say changing is really going to change anything? Because we've had several. It's not just the same people we've had for the past 10 years. And looking at this, do you think that these terrorists are now looking at this and exploiting it in the sense that these attacks are now becoming deadlier? So it's almost like they're unfazed. They're not scared anymore. So even if we change, are we really going to see a significant difference?
That was what I said earlier, that if we change, some people say change the heads, change the heads. I am not particularly for that change, but, if you have to remove them and then leave the system as it is, then we are going to have the same results. So changing them or not changing them, what I would recommend for the military is to upgrade them, restructure them if possible, restructure the security system. Because not only the military itself, we are having problems inside the country. Change the system, get new equipment, let them be high class technology that they could deal with. Because right now, all the intelligence agencies are dealing with high level equipment. So why are we still using the same equipment and doing the same thing all over the place? Whether we change those heads or not, and we don't change the system, then we will be having the same results.
I like that you mentioned that, because earlier this year there were talks about technology in fighting insurgency, like the drones, so we have a clearer view and other, equipment. So, I mean, what happened to that? Because if we're saying this is what needs to be done. Again, we said it before. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, the president even, mentioned this as well. So it's like we're repeating the cycle, isn't it?
It is. Because we've heard about them deploying drones. We've heard them deploying all kinds of new technology and stuff like that. But these days, sometimes the money is allocated to them, but it's not released. I don't know. That's the way government operates. The money has been allocated, but they've not got the money. We bought some Tucano helicopters from the United States. They've still not arrived. 2 years from now, they've not arrived. So these are the kinds of things that will happen. We either have to pay more attention to how we are dealing with this, and then, of course, make sure that there is responsibility, because you cannot be doing things and nobody is accountable. The accountability is what matters, because even the service chiefs, when they send their field commanders down there, they give them instructions, and if they don't perform, they should be able to deal with that.
Do you believe in the president's ability to win this war on terror? Or do you think this is another instance of the people in power kicking the can further down along the road, perhaps for the next 4 years until the end of his 2 terms in office, and then it becomes somebody else's problem? Or do you believe that President Muhammadu Buhari will be the president to lift us out of this insurgency crisis we have here?
I cannot tell who is going to lift us out, because this thing started 10 years ago with different presidents. And, Jonathan was there, and he tried to push them back out when we were trying to have our elections. And then the elections were held. And then, of course, this particular president came in power saying that that was one of his main pillars, that he's going to attack. And, of course, he did well. The first days when we have the service chiefs especially the army chief going down to the war front and then, giving them some high morale, and everybody was happy. They pushed them out and isolated them into that Sambisa area, because before they were coming in and then, of course, trying to create caliphates. But one thing that the terrorists have done, which many people don't understand, is that some of them have been sent out into Nigeria who operate as bandits. It's the same people going out there looking for food, looking for money, and they are very much into kidnapping, because when they kidnap and get the money, they send it back to base where they use it in running their logistics. So I don't know. He said he was going to do that for us. I hope it will be a gift for us, during his presidency, that at least Boko Haram has been dealt with.
Dennis, I'll have to interrupt you. Actually, it seems like you came to a very natural end at a good time, because it is time for us to take a very short break. And when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Dennis Amachree. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We are still joined by security expert and former Department of the State Security Assistant Director, Dennis Amachree.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, let's look at this from the perspective of the victims of this violence. People are being killed. The most annoying thing I feel is just knowing that, okay, this is how my family member died or someone I love died, and then you hear that the perpetrators somehow were released or given some type of, pardon and, not being made to face the full extent of the law. So I would like to know, how would you rate how dangerous it is for the average Nigerian, how dangerous life has become for the average Nigerian right now with everything that's happening?
There is basic insecurity across the country. Basic insecurity. Because when you look at it, in the West, remember, they have serious insecurity that made the governors to come together and say that they want a Moteco.
Yes.
And they've had it. I just wanted them to be more operative, because they've had them, but they're still, maybe they're underground or something, but they should. 2 days ago, the northern governors have also hinted a situation where they want vigilantes to come in. And then, of course, when you look at the southeast and south-south, they are busy with community policing. Now, all these are solutions that they are looking for, but these solutions might not be very, very effective. Because when you look at it, is the kind of structure we have been running. We are still running with the colonial police structure. And that structure has outdated itself. It has expired, so to say. I think what we need now is state police. State balkanize the police system, where policing is going to be taken down to the grassroots. You have state police, you have local government sheriffs, and allow policing to happen. Even some big estates can have their own police. That's the whole idea. I don't know why we are trying to hold back on this police thing, because many times, politicians want to use them as their own, a politician without police escort will feel that he doesn't have power, Or if his police mopole were withdrawn, then he starts complaining, oh, even my mopoles were withdrawn, he's going to die. A local government chairman who is moving around with 7, 8 mopoles, what does that mean? You are a man, you are supposed to be man of the people. So remain there with them. And I think if we have these different policing systems, in the United States alone, we have about 18,000 police organizations. 18,000. And these ones take care of their different jurisdictions, because the criminal problems are different. So we cannot continue with the system we're having. People are very, very insecure right now.
Exactly. If we were to escalate this conversation and focus on the president himself, across this 5-year period, I'd imagine you've been following it very closely. So if you were to highlight a time during these 5 years where the president has done more than any other president, has gone further than any other president in terms of combating security, what would that be? Or does that even exist?
Okay, he came in on a tripod of situations. One is security, the other one is the economy, and then the other one is corruption. You know, we still have security problems. The economy, we're still struggling because apparently some of the areas that were supposed to be self-sufficient, we are not. And then, of course, when you look at the corruption area, a lot of people are scared when they want to. It was not as, you know, before the impunity was too much. People were openly, you know, trying to steal money. But now, some people have been pursued into hiding, some have run out of the country, and those that are here, and what I will advise the president is there are people, you know, who are still in the country, who are still playing on this corruption issue. Because they believe that, yeah, if they are members of the ruling party, nothing will happen to them. But of course, in that area, we've seen a very good result whereby, you know, a lot of people have been brought to book in the corruption area. But I will also pray that the judiciary is going to help, because in certain criminal areas and insecurity causing areas, they have to be very, very fast, like kidnapping. You know, there are people who have been caught for kidnapping and they are still sitting down there waiting for trial. You know, let punishment be done so that people will know that, yes, if I do this, I'll be punished. But if nobody is punished, people feel that, oh, I can do it and get away with it. So what's the big deal?
What is the big deal? Well, certainly a lot. Speaking about what you said about effective policing now, looking at this realistically, you know, like I said, again, we've spoken about that earlier. And with, like you said, Amachree in the West, the Northern Vigilantes, would you say that is some type of alternative that, you know, the government has created to this policing we're looking at? And if that is the case, one, who's holding them accountable for ensuring that these attacks stop happening? And then two, how do we, you know, how do we really monitor, you know, what we're fighting if that's the case?
Yeah, to a very large extent, we really don't know much about what we are fighting, you know, because these bandits are all over the place running around. We're calling them bandits. Of course, I have, from serious observations, I've discovered that their traffic and their movements show that they are an extension of Boko Haram. You know. Do we have a
database on these people? Is it possible to say, okay, yes, we have 10 of them, or 10% are Nigerians, another 15% are from another country, you know, these are the people from this. Do we have like a proper database to really account for who these people are, or is it vague?
Some people have been arrested, out of them, and then during the interrogation, they have either claimed that they are from Niger Republic, some of them are from Chad, you know, and that tells us other things too, because we have other terrorist groups that are operating around the West African sub-region. And so if those guys are from Niger and they're here carrying arms, that tells us that they might be belonging to some other places. And then, of course, if we trace them all the way back, we'll find out that some of them have fought in certain things. There are people that have been arrested and interrogated by even the police and the SSS, and they've said that, look, we partook in the ambush of the military in a particular place and stuff like that. And then, of course, we've called them Boko Haram before. And if these people are actually bandits that were, you know, ambushing, then, of course, you can trace their lineage. So I know that there are some security, private security companies that are into research that have been keeping data. And, of course, there is credible data to support all this.
So just out of, you know, I would like to know, and I'm sure everyone else would really like to know, how exactly, if they're not Nigerians, you know, obviously they do not live in Nigeria, so how are they coming in? You know, they keep increasing. The more we think we fought these ones off, it's like they send double the amount. So how are they coming in? Who's letting them in? How are they
coming in? Our borders are open. I will not even call them porous. They are not porous. Porous means you have stops, you have checkpoints all over the place, and then, of course, people are sneaking and coming in. That is not the situation. Our borders are open, whereby people can come in at will and go out at will without the security agencies knowing. So you find out that these ungoverned spaces that we have as borders is a major problem for us, because through them we have terrorists coming in, through them we have illegal arms coming in, and the proliferation of arms in Nigeria, of course, is one that a lot of people are very worried about.
In that case, would it not be common sense for us to have already put in plan instances where our borders are closed? I understand that to the north of the country, it's far easier said than done than to say we have to man a border or to put up a wall, for lack of a better term, at this time in our political lives. But wouldn't that be the first call of action, manning our borders?
Look, Femi, you have to understand that the borders are still closed as I talk to you right now. The Nigerian borders are closed. But people are still coming in. You know, what does that tell you? It means that we are not monitoring our borders enough. And if we are not monitoring those borders, they will continue to come. We will have all these arms in, and then we'll have all kinds of problems that those people coming in are going to cause for us. Now, how do you monitor these borders? We're not going to build a wall, just like Donald Trump is suggesting. But we can monitor them with technology. You know, all those drones they were talking about, all those sensors and stuff like that, these technologies are available. And they're available in the open market.
Why do I see there's a link here, you know, intentional frustration to lead to powerlessness in fighting insurgency?
I hear that, and I do see that. Exactly that. And I think that's what it is. We're talking about power and the loss of that power, and everybody trying to struggle to find out where they stand. Dennis, we were going to continue this conversation for another segment. It is time now for us to take a short break, and when we come back, we will continue our discussion with Dennis Amachree. Please do stay with us.
You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still talking with Daniel Amachree, the former Department of State Security Assistant Director. Now, thanks for sticking with us again. Just before we went on that break, we were talking about the frustration and almost intentional frustration of all our efforts. So looking at this, I think we've been able to identify various loopholes. The fact that the border is just wide open. So when we kill off, they just come right back. You know, the fact that technology has been spoken about, but for some reason, you know, we just can't put it in place. And like you said, you know, these things take time. So looking at the fact that these things take time, how much longer are we looking at to really not putting an end to, because that might take a long time, but salvaging this situation? Because like I said, the attacks are getting deadlier. If we're looking at the various attacks, the Southern Kaduna killings, you know, various locations still trying to understand the fact that they're still under siege. You know, they can't move around freely. And these Nigerians are farmers. These are people that probably don't even have access to social media. So imagine if they did. Imagine how much we would know about the cases.
We have a problem, and we need to start addressing them right now. Because like you mentioned earlier, farmers, most of them have lost their farming season because they are either in IDP camps or they are running into some other city for safety. And that is going to give us a projected problem, and that's food security. And yes, we are going to have a food security problem. I'm sure the security agencies have already told the government. Because if you're not planting, and then that season passes away, and then of course, you have bare land. So that is a problem that we're going to get. And then again, when you look at all the other people crying, and in the north you have people now coming out to even say Northern Lives Matters, you know, and stuff like that. I think it should be Nigerian Lives or Black Lives Matters, because Nigeria is the largest black country in the world, so Black Lives Matters. And we are not keen into that anyway for now, but we're worried with our own internal problems. So these are factors that are really bordering on security that we should be looking at.
Mm-hmm. If we were to look at the havoc Boko Haram have wreaked on Nigeria, most especially in the north of the country, for this 10-year period, do you think it's fair to describe what they've done, how they've attacked Muslims and non-Muslims, as some form of genocide, or do you think that would be going too far to describe their atrocities over this period?
Well, it's genocidal because when you look at the kind of numbers they've killed, you know, it's more than Boko Haram, it's more than COVID-19. Because when you look at that, the gusto or the kind of resources we've put into fighting COVID-19 and what these people have been doing, then you'll be very, very worried. They're going around and raising down villages and then, of course, burning churches, burning mosques. It's terrorism because that's what they are doing, trying to put fear into everybody's mind. There are people that have not been in their cities or in their villages for so long because they are on the run or in IDP camps. So, you know, they've caused a lot of problems. A lot. And I think this is a decisive time. The president have told them, you know, no more excuses. And if there are no more excuses, I think even they themselves will sit back and say, come, we've done this for so long. How can we do it differently? How can we, you know, get new results, you know, in doing what we're doing?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm glad you mentioned new results or more results, because I don't think we could end this conversation without talking about the issue of missing girls. We still have Leah Sharubu still in captivity. We still have girls from the Chibok situation still away from home. I hate to act as though one victim is more important than another, but when we have instances of schoolgirls going missing for years on end, don't you think that it is a shame and something that Nigeria should be ashamed of, that after all of these years, after all of this time, we still cannot find these girls?
Of course, it's a cause for worry. It's a very serious cause for worry, and then, of course, the country is very worried. People are worried. The government itself is worried. The president had always come out to say that he is going to bring them back, you know, and I hope they do, because one or two things that might be stopping the, you know, stop gaps in this would be the issue of ransom. You know, the government have to come out and say, we are not paying ransom again, because they kidnap these people expecting the government to pay them ransom so that they could use it to buy more arms, they could use it to buy food for themselves. But if we say we are not, if there's a zero tolerance on payment of ransom, they too will know that, oh, we are not going to, if you kidnap somebody, nobody is going to give you any money. So let's stay away from it. But the government have to come out with that. And then, of course, use their might, because there are some compromises and there are some double agents. There are some people that are turncoats that have been supporting these people, you know, and the government should sit back and, you know, get everybody involved in this thing and then crush it, because there are people that are fighting against the success of, you know, we clearing Boko Haram.
Interesting. Now, looking at the fact that we've taken a look at these loopholes, and we have taken a look as well as what the president had to say to the service chiefs. Now, the coordinator for the Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, he said that the military is not weak. That one of the major issues they have is oftentimes when they identify the camps that these, you know, insurgents are staying in, and they are aware that they've been identified. They go into the farmland and the villages and mix up with the people. So it's hard to maybe say, okay, we're going to bomb this area, we're going to attack this area, because, you know, there will be casualties. Yeah. So, like I said, we've identified so many loopholes in this. In your own opinion, what would you say is, because I'm sure you've thought about this as well, is the most effective strategy in handling insecurity in Nigeria?
the most effective strategy in handling this is by intelligence, serious intelligence operations, because you are dealing with an asymmetric enemy, an enemy that you don't understand, you don't recognize by uniform, and you cannot go and start bombing villages because they use them as human shield. They live among the people. So the best thing is a serious intelligence operation where you penetrate, what we call penetration in the communities. Raise agents, manage serious agents, if possible double agent if you can do that. There are some people that have been captured. Talk to them, turn them around, and then send them back into that group to give you steady information. Because you cannot win this war without serious intelligence. It's intelligence driven because the enemy cannot be identified.
Do you foresee foreign intervention in Nigeria's fight against insurgency? Do you think we'll have a situation where we'll have the likes of the United States do more and dip their hand further into helping Nigeria with its security issue? Do you think Nigeria needs foreign intervention to help its fight?
Well, fighting insurgency or terrorism always need a multinational support. And the United States have come to support us. I know that they've trained some of our people and they've done one or two things. Of course, they've even tried to sell us arms. The Tucano helicopters I mentioned earlier were all to be bought because of fighting this war. And, United States have their own politics altogether. And I don't know why those Tucanos are not here. And then you have other foreign countries like Russia, United Kingdom that are also helping us, So it's an international thing. We will get international support because terrorism, as it has come to be known right now, can move from one country to the other. And most of the people fighting us now, giving us most of the problems, are ISIS fallouts. People that were dislodged in Syria or Libya who have, tried to, soldiers of fortune who want to look for new places to make money, have tried to move south into the sub-Saharan region.
All right, now I'd like to talk about the victims again of this insurgency. How can we do better to making sure that they can't be okay, obviously, because they've had to deal with something very terrible. Some of them, they lose their lives, they lose their source of livelihoods, they lose family, children are left all alone. So I understand, yes, the IDP camps for the displaced people, but how can we do better to make sure that they're okay?
I think the president can do better because I think everything stops, the buck stops on his table. We've had reports of bad, immense corruption going on in the IDP camps. People who are supposed to supply food are not supplying them, because corruption is one of our biggest problems. And I think he should look at it. He should look at it more closely, or his aides should look at it and advise him that this is something that we cannot continue doing. It's like pouring water in a basket. People are using the money that is meant for these people for their own private pockets and stuff like that, and the people are still suffering in IDP camps. We are supposed to build new villages or towns for them. No, but this is not done, and they are still living in IDP camps. Some of them have even opted to go back to the terrorist camps because they felt that they are suffering. There are a lot of abuses going on their young girls, and all kinds of things that are going on in the IDP camp. So it's something that we have to, because there is this tendency for us to say, oh, okay, forget them. At the initial stage, you find all kinds of people coming to help, even NGOs are coming to help and everything. After a while, everybody fritters away, and that's not the best way to handle this.
Right.
Daniel Amachree, thank you so much for your time on The Morning Show.